A detention hearing for Jack Teixeira, the Massachusetts Air National Guardsman charged with leaking classified information, has been canceled. The hearing in a Boston federal court was supposed to determine whether he will stay in federal custody. The 21-year-old has been in jail ever since last week after he was arrested and charged with unauthorized retention of classified material. Today, the judge agreed to the defense's request for a 2-week delay. So it can have more time to respond to the government's request for detention. I'd like to welcome Phil Mudd. He is a former counterterrorism official in the CIA. Phil, we're excited to have you here. What do you make of this hearing being canceled?
Well, I wouldn't make too much of the cancellation. Look, you're talking about a complicated case with a lot of documents. Lawyers are going to say it's not only difficult to go through that number of documents. My guess is they're looking for access to highly classified stuff. Not every lawyer is going to have the kind of clearances, obviously, to look at that kind of stuff. So when I saw the cancellation go out, I knew there'd be some reaction to it, but I don't think it means a lot for the case in general, Kelly.
Okay, that's great insight. So Tuesday, Andrew Napolitano, a former New Jersey Superior Court judge, as you know, appeared on the show and told our Marni Hughes that Teixeira's alleged actions should be protected as free speech, the same way the media are protected. He told Marni that the truth is the greater good here and Teixeira should be pardoned. We have a quick clip.
Jack Teixeira, if he is the thief, helped Americans know that their own government has been lying to them. And that is something we have the right to know when we decide whether or not to reelect that government.
So what do you think about those statements? And should Teixeira be protected from prosecution?
Absolute, complete, utter nonsense. Let me give you a couple perspectives on this as somebody who handled classified stuff for almost 25 years. Look, the first question is anarchy. If every 21-year-old who's got a bee in his bonnet wants to say, I want to release information about North Korea. I want to release information about Iran. I want to release information about Ukraine. If all the million-plus people who have access to top secret information decide that they should independently create their own policies, we don't have national security in this country. There's a simple solution to that, and that is there are members of Congress, dozens of them, more than dozens, who have access to top secret information. They can hold hearings. If people think that something is going wrong with U.S. policy in Ukraine or anyplace else, the Congress of the United States and the separation of powers can call people in from the State Department, from the CIA, and say, what are we doing? It doesn't require a 21-year-old to say, I took an oath, I'm going to violate that oath, and I'm going to do what I'm not supposed to do. I don't think that message makes sense at all.
Now, you may have alluded to it here, but does Teixeira's case mean the national security clearance system is broken? And if so, how do we go about fixing it?
I don't think it's broken. I think there's a fundamental question about what we call in government need to know. Look, if you've got a million-plus people with access to top secret information, I think a fair question would be why. I personally believe that what I saw was overclassified typically in government. I do think too many people have access to classified information. That said, the counter argument is going to be, if you look, for example, in this situation at the National Guard, if somebody in a National Guard office across America says, look, we might be deployed in Korea, we might be deployed in Europe, we might be deployed in the Middle East. How do you look at them and say, you're posted in America, but you can't see classified information about those places to which you might be deployed? It's not as easy as it sounds, but I would agree in general. Too many people see classified stuff.
I just feel like this is so maddening to so many people. Why does there seem to be such a blind spot within the military? How could Teixeira take this information and distribute it for weeks, if not months, and nobody knew about it?
That I don't get. Look, one of the simple questions you would have about this, and I'm going to make a statement, I'm not a digital expert, would be how does somebody have digital access that you can't monitor? In other words, if this individual didn't have authorization to access this material, can't you see when he's downloading it? That said, for every person who says this is easy, when you've got people across the country, hundreds of thousands looking at this information, there is no way, I don't care how good your classification system is, that you can determine what every single person is doing across this country. You can't determine what they're downloading. You can't determine who they're talking to in a bar that night. If they travel to Europe, you can't determine whether they're meeting a Russian agent. We're going to have this stuff happen no matter how much we clamp down on classification. It's just a fact of living in an open society.
So, Phil, what if it comes to light that there were foreign ties here working with Teixeira? Right now, there's no evidence to support that.
Boy, I would be surprised to see that happen. Someone working in an isolated outpost at this age who had already made contact with somebody overseas and we couldn't follow it. One of the reasons I say that is it doesn't look like this individual did a very good job of covering his tracks. If he doesn't cover his tracks and putting this stuff out on the chat room he was on, how could he have covered his tracks dealing with foreign security agents? I would imagine that people overseas in places like Russia and China, if they knew he was vulnerable, they'd go after him. But boy, finding somebody like that, if you're in Russia and China, is pretty hard. I'd be surprised to see that happen, Kelly.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.